Here.
Here.
Can all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I have a new neighbor next to me on the podium. David Rhodes, welcome. Thank you. Glad you're here. I'll mark the agenda.
No changes, Mayor.
Anyone have any? Next, the minutes are already out from July 1st. We have a motion for approval of the minutes.
So moved. Second.
Motion and second. Questions, additions, corrections? Anyone? Anyone?
No.
Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same, motion carries. No special orders. We are having a study session with our wastewater treatment superintendent, Jake Rennie, who's passed his exams, and we can let Fleece go and have Jake run the show. Is that right, Jake?
Sure. Let's go with that. That sounds great.
Welcome.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to discuss IPP, and what that means is Industrial Pretreatment Program. It's been around here since 1986, and it's required by the state of Michigan for us to have it. So what does IPP do? So it helps prevent any industry from affecting our treatment to the wastewater. It also helps what we call pass-through contamination, which would normally pass through our plant because we don't test for it, and would go straight from our plant right into the river. So by this program, we can catch some of those things. And it's also with biosolids. We land apply our biosolids, and if we didn't test for it, it would get applied to land and contaminate that. So this helps prevent that. So how we do that is we identify users as a domestic, non-domestic, a significant industrial user, or a critical industrial user. We currently have one significant industrial user. The classifications include residential, commercial, industrial, institutional, and government. So we're a government. Institutional would be like Ferris, and residents are us. How we decide these limits that you're going to see on the bottom of your page is we take quarterly testing around the city for residents. We call it domestic background. We'll get those 4 times a year, and that creates like a baseline for what the plant can handle. So that's how we determine the limits that you see below based on what the average public uses. We also inspect grease interceptors around the town and industry to help keep an eye on those limits. And that's basically what IPP does. And then we also have an it's an enforcement response plan. I always mess it up. Which allows us to act on a high level or enforce it, whether it be a fine or other type of communication. So that's basically what IPP does. The chart in front of you has the previous limits, and then it has the new limits that were approved by the state. And then I just put on there for fun, the blue is our effluent average for June. So you can see we're quite a bit lower than the suggested. So how the new limits came about was in 2017, we did a local limit study, which used that domestic background sampling, and then they did a loading study on the plant, and that's how they came up with the new suggested number we submitted in 18, then adjusted or amended in 2021, and the state just approved it like 2 weeks ago. So part of that required program is we also are required to put it in our sewer use ordinance. And so we just had an audit for IPP July 3rd, and I want to make sure everything's great with it. So I'm going to resubmit and make sure they're happy with the state, and hopefully we're back here in September to vote on the official limits. I just don't want to do things twice if I mess something up. Is there any questions?
Who does those levels of cadmium, cyanide, molybdenum? You send them somewhere? Do you guys?
Yes, we sent them to Trace Labs
Where's that?
in Muskegon. We used to do Merit, but we switched to Trace because they pick the samples up versus us shipping with UPS. And there's chromium on there that's like a 24-hour test. And a lot of times they don't get there in time, so it's easier if they just pick them up. So Trace actually picks them up directly from us.
And we don't actually treat those contaminants, we just tell them if we got them. You don't
Correct, we
treat
don't do
them.
any treatment for those ones. The solids and phosphorus and ammonia we do treat for.
So if these are high, what do you do?
Well, for
Trace where they came from,
example,
or?
if those were high, what would happen is we would get, the state would start requiring us to test quarterly for it on our effluent. If we had like a high, so it'll become a part of our permit. Those top ones aren't under permit now, they're just required for us to sample twice, it's like a report only. However, the BOD, total suspended solids phosphorus, those are all have limits attached to them from the state. Ammonia is report daily.
Questions, commissioners?
I just wanted to understand the sequencing, because the letter in our packet is to you, and is this just them saying, like, hey, we updated the rates, here's, like,
So we asked for them to update it
okay,
in 2021, and they just approved it.
okay, that's what you meant by
So
that, okay.
we're kind of behind, like, we should have done another local limit study, but you can't do one until the other one gets approved, and that's, so.
Okay,
So normally every 5 years, and this one was done in 2017. So you'll hear more about this as we go.
okay.
So at some time, do we have to do a resolution accepting these new values, or do you just do?
Yes, in September, we'll have to do a resolution accepting new values. And then probably again, once we do our local limit study and go through the process, there is a way we can put an amendment, or an appendix in the sewer use ordinance, so we can only have to change the appendix and not have the whole sewer user ordinance in it. It is an option. I believe we asked the state about that on the 3rd. But then we still have to vote on that.
From the public too, anything? Thank you, Jake. Congratulations, Jacob.
Thanks.
Passing all those
Congrats.
tests.
Hey, only 9 people in the state passed.
Out of,
Out of 27. So it's a 33% pass rate. So, and there was 13 or 14 taking it for the 3rd time. So, but I survived, that's all.
just because you pass doesn't mean you get to go to another city that's bigger for more money.
Not yet. I've been here for 20 years.
Oh, okay, good.
If I
Gotcha.
was gonna leave, I would have, I guess. I don't know. I'm settled in.
Canadian Link.
Thank you, Jake.
He's building that house.
Public comment not related to items that are already on the agenda.
Hello.
Hi, Sherry.
I didn't really expect to speak tonight, but I was at the lake all day with my girlfriend. I dropped her off. And when I came back around Michigan Avenue on the corner of Michigan and Linden, I kind of got a surprise. And I'm running for county commissioner in the city of Big Rapids, so this was something that I thought should be brought to you guys' attention. Can I bring it up?
Sure, please. That's it, right, go right down the line there. Show folks.
There's 4 of them, they're sitting on the city property. So they deface it.
Can you say what it is too, Terry, so I can have it for the minutes?
It was someone went around and crossed off the no on Goshen signs. I saw a spray painted black.
Oh, here, a minute.
So I can think of like what it is.
So I got one myself. So if you were at the McCosk County Fair this week, we had a lot of problems in there to the point where John Curry is thinking of not having the Republican nor the Democratic Party back next year. Just a lot of things, and then of course, our candidate Trump got shot, and I mean, there's just so much animosity. And this is on the city's property. I just think we need to just take a step back and not do things that are gonna rile people up. That's it. Thanks for listening.
Sorry. Mark, I don't think we're allowed to put any campaign signs on city property, is that correct?
Right, they're not supposed to be, right?
Michelle?
Correct, they
Does that
actually have
include-
it right away.
Does that include the house strip?
In between the sidewalk and the, yes, that's, I think that's what she was referring to as city property.
Yep.
Not knowing,
Right of way, but not property, right? Is that what we're referring to?
they're not supposed to be there, Mayor, right?
Michelle Holmes. Any other public comment, please? Hearing none, there are no public hearings today. General business, the main general business today is regarding things related to the social district. Who's gonna update us on, Michelle,
I can update you.
re-update the audience about the approval, et cetera.
Well, the state last week approved us to move forward with our social district, so that means the city as a whole has approval, to have the social district. Now, the businesses each have to apply individually to the state after the city would approve a resolution for each business, which is, you have 4 that have applied for today. Once they get approval and we get our signs located, and we'll be pushing out some education information on what a social district is and how people are allowed to use it and how they're not allowed to use it, then we will be moving forward with the social district, hopefully in a couple weeks. Be set up and going.
For the Michigan Association Mayors meeting. Also, how are the, what do you call them, Heather, the wall, not walls, but gates and,
The barriers.
yeah, all
the
those
seating.
things?
Those seem to be going well. We're getting lots of positive feedback from them. The barriers take about 6 weeks to order. That's the downside of it. But once we get them, Public Works has been great at setting them up, and I see people using them. So I think it's been a positive response from the community.
Questions regarding the social district? The rules are infinite, just so you know. Complicated and infinite.
What is the plan to educate the public and get the word out? And then what is the specific plan for Ferris?
We are meeting this week. We have a meeting between Chief Haynes and Josh and myself and Steve on how we're gonna approach it so we can have it ready to go.
Okay.
We'll definitely have a brochure and we'll send stuff to Ferris and website and everything.
Okay.
But Steve, you're gonna do something obviously on Facebook and on at the Pioneer, et cetera. But we gotta make sure it's after everybody's approved and everything's all set.
Understood.
Dot the T's, cross, or.
So we have the
cross
big,
T's,
we
dot
have the
I's.
big, homecoming party coming up, which is hugely attended, and, you know, if that has passed, and if they buy the right cup, from Star Shooters or whatever, they can walk around the block with it, not just in the tent.
Right.
So, that's kind of an important thing to get out soon.
And the other thing that I would say is we can't assume that Ferris students are gonna listen to the same thing, so I would reach out to like student affairs or something like that, just to see what they might think.
So it'll be a marketing blitz
We have marketing blitz.
shortly. Other questions on that? Then we're gonna move to the resolutions. The first resolution is from Jerry Bowman from Star Shooters. You'll see it before you. Is there a motion for that resolution?
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. I see Jerry's here. Anything, Jerry?
Just figured, just in case you needed me, I'd be here.
Okay.
I would say though, if, for the pamphlets or whatever, if you make a pamphlet, if I have a bunch of them, or I can print them out and just have them at the bar, it'd probably be the fastest way to get to 21-year-olds.
Sure.
For sure.
Yep.
Good. Thoughts, commissioners? The 4 who put in their applications for like that day. They're ready to go. Anyone else? Questions for either Jerry Bowman or the commission? Hearing none, did we pass a resolution? We got it. Now we gotta vote on it, do we? Tammy?
James,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Gunther,
Yes.
Rhodes,
Yes.
Simmons.
Yes.
Next is a resolution, same exact thing, only for Schuberg's. Do I hear a motion for Schuberg's application to participate in the social district?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Questions? Anybody from Schuberg's here? Hearing none, we'll Then, call the question.
Johnson?
Yes.
Rhodes?
Yes.
Simmons?
Yes.
Gunther?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Next is from, I don't know, Blue Cow, I think, is next. Connie was really kind to do this application too, because she was maybe not planning to do it, but she's gonna host the wine tasting for the Mayor's Association, and we're having a band sit out in Pocket Park. And if they took their wine and went and sat in Pocket Park, theoretically, the police could make a fuss on that, because she wouldn't have been participating with the proper glass. So she agreed to go ahead, so thank you, Connie, for that. Other questions regarding the Blue Cow? Hearing none, get a motion.
Yes. So moved. Second.
Tammy?
Rhodes?
Yes.
Simmons?
Yes.
Gunther?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
And last is another, business that has been in town a long time, Elks. They're on the very end of the social district, right? And they wanted to participate, so their applications are, do I hear a motion for approval of the Elks as a,
So moved.
Second.
and a second, questions? Hearing no questions, Tammy?
Simmons?
Yes.
Gunther?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Yes.
Next is an addition to the Star Shooters permit, mainly for the alumni reunion. Michelle, exactly why do we have to do another one?
I think the owner is just covering all bases. So if the social district gets approved by the state, you won't be moving forward with the tent. But in case the state has a hang up, as they seem to with ours, for the social district application, then the tent would go to the state too for their
Sure.
approval.
There's no, I'm not having a tent. They have to come into the bar to get it. The tent is just,
Reunion.
the reunion has a place to sit underneath.
So then is this request just for the reunion or,
That, for that specific day, yes. only.
okay,
I think, I'm not sure how the social district work, if it allows alcohol everywhere in the streets. But this thing would allow that alcohol to be in the streets like they do every year. They have it closed off and such.
What is the answer to his question?
So
I mean,
alcohol
normal.
from the social district would not be allowed within the tent. And the tent drinks would have to
So I would have to
stay.
do this every year anyway.
That's what it sounds like. Right, you can't take your social district drink into the street, even if the street's blocked off.
You can take it into you could like cross Michigan Avenue, you can't cross Maple because it's a highway, but the tent area would be designated as a special use area, or not a special event area, and so the alcohol couldn't cross between the two.
so that means he would need two separate types of cups. Correct? One for the area outside the tent.
I was supposed to make it, like, I was just getting both of them and I was gonna call the state and see what they said, but I didn't, like, I think if the city approves alcohol in the streets during that day,
Then our social district would cover it.
our social district should cover it.
So that resolution covers that.
So
But
it's,
if you have a tent with a special event, it,
They have to stay in the tent.
Yeah, they're not, I think the tent is just a place for people to sit. They're gonna be walking.
they're not serving alcohol out of it.
Nope.
Oh, okay, then yeah, you should be good.
Okay, good.
But that's not what this says.
yeah,
Hey,
that's,
well, Mayor, that's not what this says. Legal?
But I'm not having a bar inside of it.
Second paragraph. Previous J.C. Penney's to accommodate for a beer tent, tables and chairs within a secured area as indicated on the attached drawing. So it's got beer tent in the resolution.
Yeah, if you're not
They're not selling.
selling alcohol
I think
there.
you just named it wrong. Like, that's where they figure people will mostly be sitting and drinking because it's gonna be covered. It's not gonna be a serving area.
That was a little
You could
confused.
amend the resolution to just say special event tent instead of beer tent.
what is the permit or the, event application? I'm sorry, I don't have my tablet with me, but there should be, a whole packet with his request in it, the formal request.
When's the reunion, Jerry? Do you know right up?
August 3rd.
So we have to decide right now because our next meeting's not until August.
What I would say is that it just has to be very, very clear to the attendees what they're supposed to do and where they're supposed to have what.
Do you think it's clear, Michelle? You're cool.
I think when we determine if he gets approved for social district, we can do that.
When,
When, well, his business, if his business doesn't get like if the state takes too long to approve the social district, he will have this beer tent application, which would allow him to shut down the street and do what he wants to do.
This resolution.
This resolution would.
that's what it,
I mean,
This is what we do every year, isn't it?
yeah, they're gonna shut
yeah,
down
it's
every,
for the,
every,
this is for the event.
Yes.
It's for the event, but it is a
We're
beer tent.
confusing it with the social district.
Yeah, it's two separate things. This is
not-
a
We
beer
keep
tent.
saying they're not drinking in there, they're gathering in there, but this says a beer tent, so that's where I'm confused.
I think they'll be drinking, they just won't be serving the alcohol.
They won't be
over there.
purchasing it.
they're able to drink everywhere within the shutdown area.
Not just in that.
Some of it will be covered by a tent where they'll actually be sitting. I think she should have just named it special event tent or reunion gathering tent. Any of those things would work, but we're not gonna have any type of serving there. They have to come into the bar to get their drinks.
So they have to go in the bar and get the drink, and then if they wanna go sit in the tent, they can go sit in the tent,
Or in the fenced area.
or the fenced area.
Anywhere within the fenced area.
That's what the liquor licenses allow them to do.
Okay.
And the liquor license needs a resolution to go with that application.
But it's the way they've done the reunion for now,
Okay.
4 years.
Okay,
It's really, the social district is completely separate.
Yes.
You need this no matter what. Yes.
We have a motion yet for that one, Tammy. Do we have a motion for the
I don't think so. 'cause
So, but here,
alumni?
here's just, it's listed social district, like in our packet, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I just put it under there.
Okay, just wanted to make sure
It's
that,
a, it's a backup for him in case he doesn't get the social district application. It's a backup for Jerry.
no, but what we just said
That's right.
is, for his event, he needs this anyway.
It's not part of the social district.
But if he gets a social district, Michelle, will he need this application or not?
You would still need approval to shut down the street.
So we should pass the resolution.
So,
But I won't have to fill out the thing for the state anymore is what she's saying. You'll still have a packet like she submitted from, I won't be involved anymore because it'll just be social districting. She has to get approved so that this,
Shut down the street.
the Big Rapids
The
High School
Alumni
Alumni Association, yeah, has to get approval to shut it down.
Right.
And I believe that's what's happening along with this whole thing.
But,
just for clarification, if for some reason the social district doesn't allow for this in the time we need it to, will beer be served out of this tent? I think that's the question, maybe?
There'll be
You
no
always have to get it at his.
I always have to go in and get it, okay.
At least the 3 I've been to.
Okay.
Your motion for approval of the resolution regarding the alumni reunion.
So before that, I just want to clarify, are you moving for approval as written, or we talked about potentially amending the beer tent language to say special event?
Just as written.
Okay.
Do I hear a motion? As this is Union.
Could we just have a moment? I think Karen, do you need to have a copy of the contract or the application?
my challenge is we keep saying this is what it is, and then we're mixing them again. So either, yeah. It's completely separate. It is not part of the social district. It's not dependent on it.
Right?
If you don't get the social district, you need this anyway.
Yes.
You still need an extension of your business into the street, the way you do every year, right?
That's why I was filling it out just in case. I didn't know how.
But it's not just in case.
I know now.
Is that just, yeah, no,
I filled it
but-
out. It was
Yeah,
just
that's
a-
why I keep getting approved,
Gotcha.
getting confused, because it's not just in case, you have to have both. Or you have to have this before you can have the event. The social district, doesn't make sense, okay.
Do we hear a
So
motion?
moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Further questions now, all in favor? Questions? Tammy?
James,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Rhodes,
Yes.
Simmons,
Yes.
Gunther.
Yes. Was complicated, wasn't it? The resolution, for our representatives on the Michigan Municipal League Compensation Fund are before you. Their CVs, their short bios were there. Seems like we do this every year, every other year.
Yeah.
Questions? We have a motion, please. For the
So
resolution
moved.
electing municipal league.
Second.
Questions? All in favor, say aye. Do we need to roll call that? Why?
Resolution.
Because it's a resolution.
The resolution.
It's a resolution.
Other duties as assigned.
Feel free.
Johnson,
Yes.
Rhodes,
Yes.
Simmons,
Yes.
Gunther, James.
Yes.
Now we're gonna talk about the Kroger opioid resolution. Is there a motion to receive money from Kroger on their opioid settlement?
So moved.
Second.
Questions? Across the nation, opioid epidemic they're being punished for their bad behavior in giving out opioids. And it trickles down to Big Rapids. We don't even have a Kroger, do we?
No.
Did we once?
Yes.
All the way back from them? Or do they just have to pay everybody? Won't be much.
Maybe we had people who were in the settlement agreement in our community.
Any questions, anyone? It's 25 pages, the agreement. If you'd like to read it, it's very interesting. Tammy?
Rhodes,
Yes.
Simmons,
Yes.
Gunther, James,
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
This next one's my favorite one. Finally, we get to a fun resolution to pave Waterloo, Stewart, and North Fourth. All three are a disaster in the making. Right, Heather? Is that why you chose them?
It's based off the PACER rating, but I'll defer to the city manager as they give further details.
Yes, that's why I think the bottom line is yes, that's why we chose them. They're in bad shape, need paving, and went out to bid, and Reith Riley's the low bidder. But it was pretty competitive, as you saw in your packet, so.
If you look at that packet, we just paved Henderson and Hanson, and they just reversed themselves. And who bid what? They're so close. And probably Freddie Myers will end up doing the prep work for Reith and Riley, and it was the opposite in the other two roads. So it was kind of interesting to see, but thank you, Mark and Heather, for paving those roads. And the citizens who pay the taxes, right? Is there a motion for accepting the bid for paving those roads?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Questions?
I actually have a question. I drove these three roads yesterday, and I also have been seeing some talk on social media about Woodward from the city limits there to the top of the hill. Was that looked at all, Mark? Do you know?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That one's on our plan, Commissioner. We have to replace that culvert where Mitchell Creek comes through there.
Gotcha.
And that's, we're looking to do that next summer, and paving would go along with it. So.
Good to know. That way if anybody asks, I can.
Oh, they're
do anything.
complaining hugely.
Oh, when
The air's getting
yeah,
big time.
okay, yeah. I drove that one yesterday, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, it needs it.
So you're on that one. Other questions? Yeah, we did a motion on that already. Tammy?
Simmons,
Yes.
Gunther,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Yes.
Next, a bit of serious business for the city. Tammy Gillis is retiring in December, and the commission administration, Mark, have decided to hunt for a clerk a little early on, so there'd be overlap between the new clerk and the old clerk, so that they wouldn't be totally green coming in. So a committee of 5, which included Brad Feller as the city attorney, Mark Evers city manager, myself as the mayor, and Lorraine James as commissioner, and Marcy Purcell, the county clerk. Great committee. I thought it made quick work. We had 24 applications for our city clerk. And it was work. We got through them, and today had our interviews. And so the question always arises with the other commissioners who weren't in the room, because we can't have more than 2 in a room at a time, so we never have more than 2, as to how you would like to follow up. And there's been many different ways to do that. With the city treasurer, it was the commission voted to allow the committee's choice to be offered the job. That's the only one of that level that I've been involved with. Were there other ways, Lorraine?
Well, there's been other ways where candidates have come into the commission room and all the commission members have had an opportunity to, ask them questions. That's the only
other way.
Other way.
So as a member of that committee, Mark chaired the committee. My first thought would be it was a great committee, good folks. I wonder if because our next meeting's not till August, something was just 3 weeks or more. Every candidate said, when am I gonna know? And we said, well, probably mid-August, and it's like, what a wait. So my request, Mark was the chairman, but I'd request that the commission vote to either approve the committee's work or demand interviews of the candidates in public in August. Is that it, Mark, what the committee thought? Lorraine?
Yes.
That was where we ended
Well,
up.
that's where we ended up.
So we'd like to hear input, the committee would, and whichever y'all think is best.
I'm okay with proceeding based on the committee's recommendation. You guys did the work that you were supposed to do. I have no reason to doubt that. I've had an offline conversation with the city manager. I have no issues with having the committee work on that.
I would agree.
I agree.
Then we should probably have a vote to say that, to authorize that committee to.
I don't think you need a vote. I think the vote would be at the August meeting to approve the recommendation of the committee, and you'd have a resolution to that effect in the August 12th meeting.
Would it be inappropriate to have the person who was selected by the committee and the other 2 to know, so they don't have to wait 3-4 weeks?
You could do a vote, I guess, tonight to
That's
have,
fine.
authorize the committee to inform the candidate.
Yeah.
That's what I was hoping.
Not name the candidate today, but,
Right.
okay, all right.
So I would entertain a motion to allow the committee to make the job offer to the selected person.
I would second that motion.
Mayor can't make a motion.
Mayor can't make a motion.
Oh.
You make it.
So,
I would like to make a motion to inform the candidates of their position in,
Based on the recommendation.
based on the recommendation of the committee.
Second.
okay.
Motion
Yeah,
second.
there we go.
I did.
David.
Questions? Public have any thought?
I think you guys are doing a great job.
All right, Tammy?
James,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Rose,
Yes.
Simmons,
Yes.
Gunther.
Yes. Very good. Next is a work session on the 45-page housing study that Michelle sent us. And we're going to round up over in that area. Everyone's welcome to stay, but we're going to talk housing a lot. We'll adjourn for 5 minutes for everyone.
Friday, maybe?
That's what Mark was thinking, that I was.
I'm trying to picture it. Did it move outside of town too, or was that the Eberhard that went out that way?
Hearts went out there.
Eberhard went out there, but so the Kroger must have been there Friday.
We honestly didn't have a Kroger.
This is important.
Yes, we did. Yeah, it's a nice store.
Or more.
You were back a long time ago.
I switched seats with you so you didn't have to sit on the post. Pick one for the team.
Thank you.
So, this special work session was an important one regarding housing. Karen Simmons going to lead, but the whole question I had to myself was, should the city be in the housing business at all? I mean, we build houses on Rust and we build, just rarely here and there. And so that's behind everything else, that should be one of the main questions. Should we be in the housing business at all?
But you know, prior to all of this, back in the day, we used to, you might have been here, we would buy houses and housing would rehab them. And then get money back after the houses were sold. We did a lot of that. So there was a lot of joint ventures between the city of Big Rapids and their
That's
money
just part of the history that
and
we
housing.
think about
That's
as
just
we're
part
going
of the
forward.
history.
Yeah, that was a Mishta grant that they don't
Yep.
offer anymore, but it worked out really good. I think
did.
we rehabbed 1 houses maybe.
Yeah.
Wow,
Got
there's a
quite
lot
a
of
few
houses.
signed or, yeah.
Yep, there was quite a few.
Was yours a Mishta?
I
Should-
believe it
yours
was.
was a buyback.
I believe it
I
was.
wondered if it was.
Yep.
Twice.
An old run, yeah.
We got hit by lightning, we
Yep.
caught on fire, and then
So
we
it was
had to
extra
build
new
it a
on
second
the
time.
inside.
Right after.
Okay,
we
Karen,
started.
fire away.
So, Michelle and I talked earlier today, and I'm gonna hand this over to her, but what I'll say is that, yes, it was a long packet, but ultimately, I think what we should be thinking about today is for some of us, this is the first time we're looking at the housing study from 2020. For some of us, this is the first time we're talking about the different types of housing. I think I have a little experience because I was on the planning commission and kind of have a little bit more information on the types of housing. Not looking to get buried in the weeds and go into a lot of details, but Michelle is gonna kind of walk us through the packet. And I think in the back of your head, be thinking about what is it that we want, if anything, for the planning commission to look at? Because that's kind of the next phase to this, is the planning, commission is gonna get the, city master plan back. They're gonna have some recommendations in there. They're gonna do some of the, difficult work and the heavy lifting. So what guidance might we want to give them as the city commission? Kind of the first thing there. And then I'm sure other things will come up, but that was my thought for today.
Good. An editorial comment. I'm not overly smart, but that study was one of the hardest collections of data I've ever seen in my life. And it's usually because the person who writes it isn't very clear in their thinking. It was hard to read. After 3-4 pages, it's like, I can't do this anymore. And I don't know how others felt, but it was
Yeah.
difficult read.
It was, and it was a difficult read when we first got the information back, and I know we've had a turnover in staff, we've had a turnover in commissioners, we've had a turnover in the planning commission, and let's face it, Big Rapids 2020 is very different from Big Rapids 2024.
I was gonna say, and we had a pandemic.
Yeah, so, and that's why I was, kind of hoping to break things down into maybe more simpler terms, cause you can get buried in graphs and like,
Flower power. And flower.
and again, one of the things Michelle and I talked about was like, could we have like 3 to 5 demographics instead of 20 that really don't mean anything to us? So with that, I'll kind of turn it over to Michelle.
So the first section of my packet that I sent you is just kind of going over, I've read the housing study probably 3 or 4 times to try to get my head around it, because it is written in a way that's very difficult to process. But the first page is actually from the state housing study on median home values and median rent versus median income. And I think the main thing to take away is the space difference in between the lines as it moves over time, and how that space, especially in home values, has changed since really probably like 2016. And so how that space has continued to grow and grow, making it more difficult for home ownership. And then I also think in rent, it's changed, but it hasn't changed in the same way that it has for home ownership. So I think that's like the big thing to take over and take away from that, and not get lost in the detail of the numbers, just, you know, there's a change. The opening statement of the housing study is that there is solid and good merit in developing a variety of new housing choices, including some for-sale detached houses and cottages and homes with accessory dwelling units, for-lease urban lots for students, and other for-lease formats for a diverse mix of other lifestyle clusters moving into and within the city. So I think that's also a very important thing to take out of the housing study. We need all different kinds of housing. It doesn't say we need just this one specific kind. We need all different types, all different choices, in order to come up with a housing plan that works for everyone, or housing that works for everyone. So then I just did a description of the cluster, lifestyle clusters, which is a cluster in itself. And you can go through them individually if you want, but they make it very difficult. They're basically different age groups with different money amounts. So trying to figure that out is very difficult, especially when they move through the findings. So the first finding is the for sale market potential. In the table I pulled from the housing study, there were 50 units that were recommended on an annual market potential to be built for sale homes, or new for sale homes. So this includes 15 new homes for the college and university affiliates, and 11 for the digital dependents, is the biggest units of clusters that the study called out. So college and cafes are staff, recent grads, young singles, and then the digital dependents are Gen X and Gen Y, so your 25 to 59-year-olds, singles living in a digitally driven lifestyle. I don't know necessarily who that is, because I feel like everyone's digitally driven.
Yeah.
To some extent.
You know, like we have iPhones or what? Come on, speak English.
I will say, I believe that all 5 missing middle houses are probably going to digital dependence. I just didn't realize it till today.
Well, I'm sure there's some people that are
I mean,
pretty
they're all
happy
young.
about that.
They're all young.
They're all young.
They're all young.
Do you think that the 50 new houses for sale, regardless of what type of houses they are, do you think that's still do you think that's a realistic number for the city of Big Rapids to grow by 50 houses every year?
So I think the important thing is to think about is when they did this study, nowhere, they talk about how they come up with the numbers, and they talk about in-migration and people moving around in the city, or inter-migration. But a lot of the tables say that it does not include out-migration. So it doesn't necessarily include people moving out. So I'm not sure if this table does or not, because it didn't have that information. 50 a year seems like a high number.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know that 50 new houses have been built in this city since I started at the Housing Commission. And I've been here almost 30 years, so is it
50
realistic?
is like,
No.
so in other words, if it's 50 houses, do we then accept the rest of their data? Because as soon as you say that, I'm thinking, what's the rest? It's all, that's nonsense.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, then what do you do?
I don't know what
Yes.
the survey from 2020 means to us today, if so many things have taken place, including COVID. And I don't know how much land is in the city, other than.
I don't know that we could build 50 houses, I'll tell you
Yeah,
that.
I don't
build a house.
I don't think it's worth completely throwing out, but I think that's also like, when we see numbers like 50, what I would hope is that, you know, when the master plan comes back and when there's updated numbers from the state, things like that, where maybe we'll get a better read on. Wouldn't you think, Michelle?
I don't know if the master plan will go into that detailed information, cause they didn't do a market study. But I would, you know, the state's really focusing on housing right now, so I think they're going to be pushing studies, and Nuevo County just finished their own housing study, which I can take a look at and see how those numbers compare to our numbers. We're a different situation, but we're still a rural community with a couple small cities in it, so.
Assuming the home value, minimum home values are 2020 figures too.
Yes.
$100,000 won't buy you much.
Yeah, that's on my note too, is like, I think the square footage, so they talk about, square footage 850, no larger than 1650, I think those are probably reasonable numbers, I don't think that's probably shifted, but the home values is
The houses that Linda built are nice little houses, but what are they, 1,300, Linda?
1334, and I did the math, it's about 225 a square foot compared to,
So it's
that's
just,
125.
Then basements and
true, that's
you know,
right.
basements and garages too, so.
But if we could find 50 people to buy $300,000 homes, that'd be a pretty good run for us, I think. I think that's not gonna happen.
So the next chart is just total owner units, so maximum number of new builds and rehabs annually by home value. I think that number, we probably do have a significant amount of housing that could use some rehabs to it. We have an older housing stock, so there's probably room for some improvements on, you know, the traditional houses or cottages getting some love in that manner.
Michelle and I met last week, there is money for that available, there is grant money for that.
So would it be the type of thing like you guys did 20 years ago or whenever it was?
It's a little bit different.
It's a little bit different, but this is community development block grant money that the city would probably have to apply for, and then we would certainly be more than willing and interested to help administer it. We already do it from Acosta County and Osceola County, who just got a chill grant, which is all similar grant to do that kind of stuff.
One of the things that the planning commission talked about years ago was trying to maybe some of the areas like that are like historical rentals, and maybe converting them back to single family or something.
That's what we did with the IDAC neighborhood, is we converted them back to single family.
So the next page is just kind of price range. It's more helpful to understand the square footage information in there than it is to look at the price range, since the price ranges are so out from 2020 that it doesn't really provide much information. Then we move to for rent market potential. And there were 4 groups of clusters that had the most for rent, if you look at that table. So the potential is 325 new units for rent. If you don't include the college and cafes, which is not just college students, it is including, you know, recent grads or people who are just entering the markets, or their job life, or staff that's working for colleges, those kind of people.
So, Michelle, we need 325 more rental units? Does that mean up one house might have 5?
Mm-hmm.
So there'd be 5 and then 325.
So, but
Ferris is gonna build a new dorm probably, so maybe.
Well, but they're gonna take some down. I think what it comes back to is, like, with the, single family homes, whatever type they be, it's not 50, but it's something.
It's something, right.
It's, we know it's something. Same thing with the number of units.
Things include student housing. you need 305 units.
Well,
Because I tried to find that back here.
yeah, the college and cafes, they're not very, from how I read it, it does not include college students. Because it says, young singles, alumni, recent grads, staffs connected to colleges.
Well, and I think it's good to understand that there was a time and place that somebody pressed print on this. And we invested in a study that, again, we've had staff changeover and we're in a different mindset coming out of COVID. So ultimately, I think it's finding out, especially if the state is doing housing studies, if we don't have to pay for another housing study.
I don't know if theirs will be this detailed,
Okay.
but
I
They
would
just
never pay
published.
that company to do the study, they just can't read it.
very,
It has to be readable by lay people who are trying to make decisions.
So, but
so those, I think one of the things to look at, or one of the important things to look at, is that there were family troopers and Daring to Dreams, which were our highest number of units that we needed. So the family troopers were
Where's you getting
family,
these names? What?
that's what names they made up.
No, Michelle.
You made them up.
Wait a minute. So,
My goodness
so,
sakes.
but let her explain what they are.
Well, what are cafes? Why do we need 300 cafes? I thought that's where you had coffee.
The cafes are the recent college grad staff or
Oh, this study is just too much.
The family troopers are families and single parents that have some sort of military connections. So there's a need for 63 units for them. And the Daring to Dream, which are young couples or singles just starting out, which to me is the same thing as college cafes, because they said they're recent grads. But I guess it could be non-graduates, and they need 100 from them. So I think, again, we have a need for rentals.
But again, this was done in 2020, right?
Yeah,
So the population has changed. And you can't really use these numbers. At least, in my opinion, you can't use them. How do we find out this information if that's what we wanna know?
I mean, the
Because
only
this is-
way to find out that kind of information is to do another housing study.
Like how, these categories that they came up with, do they explain their methodology for how they came up with? Like, it's just very,
Yeah, no, in the study, they explain what
study,
each of
it
it
does.
Beginning of the
So
packet,
she
there was
basically,
Yeah.
she took the
cheat
whole
sheet.
study and like pared it down to some things that we could reuse right now.
if you did.
Again, you don't throw the whole thing out, you know, some lessons learned.
If you did another study, though, you'd have to use the same categories to, right, to compare, or you.
I would
just
want
A trooper or a cafe?
100% not.
I would make it by age and economic level.
Yeah. But I think that's good to talk about here, is this is what we would do next time, right?
I also think it's very valid to go through the data we paid to have compiled before we order somebody to do this again. So all of these pitfalls we're seeing in the last study that were done don't happen again, and we're wasting taxpayer dollars to have the same conversation once they complete the study. Like, we need to know what information they collected, what information it's missing, and what information was just like completely invalid, so we can go forward. If we're going to have another housing study, we can go forward with the master plan, how we wanna move forward.
Question, the one in Newaygo County, was that through Kelly Wazick? Is that the one she was working on? Or what?
Julia.
It was through the right place?
Yes,
Right,
yes.
okay. Cause I know when I talked to her last week, she said something about possibly doing one in Mecosta County after the Newaygo one. She kinda wanted me to look at it, she said when it was done, so I mean,
I can
it would
send
be
it to
interesting
you.
to see.
I think I have it.
Well, Linda, the Housing Commission does have some information on housing, you know, it's
Right,
what
we
we
have
need
the
and what we
market
have.
study that we did, we know that, we know what our demand is for our apartments, for sure. And we
So
have
that
a
could-
wide range of housing.
Yeah, we do.
So if we
The
just
whole
go
thing-
back to,
whole thing changes, right, if Goshen comes, I mean, the whole thing
Right.
disappears and we have to come up with a new plan if, so.
Right.
That's another huge factor.
And that's an unknown at this point. So, Michelle, going back to the study and understanding, you know, that, yeah, it's not apples to apples with today, what are some important takeaways?
I think the most important thing to take from the study is that it shows we need all different kinds of housing and that we need more. That's, if you're gonna take two things away from that study, that's what I would take. We need more housing and we need all different kinds because we have multiple sectors that are looking for housing.
Fair to say the greatest need would be in the young professionals or people just out of college seems to be the biggest need.
Yeah.
The people that are moving here to town too.
Yeah, moving to town or the people who are younger seem to be having the hardest time finding housing or have the most demand in this study. The next section I went over and I'm not gonna go into all of these in detail because you'll forget them and they're cumbersome. But one part from the Michigan housing funding options that I want to stress is there are lots of times we talk about low income housing and everyone gets this vision in their head of what low income housing is and this page. I skipped a bunch of pages.
Oh. No wonder it wasn't making a whole lot of sense.
Well, I was gonna say the pink page, but yours is black and white. That's
This
the-
one,
Yes.
Yes.
got it.
Thank you. No problem. So everyone, you say low income housing, you get this idea in your head and that's the idea that's stuck because that's what we've been talked about forever, what low income housing is. So I think it's important to have that discussion. Low income housing is not necessarily people who are not working. A lot of the low income housing people in our community are actually working. They have their service type jobs, their jobs that keep our community going. And I think that we need to be cognizant of that when we're having discussions of what kind of housing we need and what is affordable. So
It's better to call it affordable housing than
affordable
low-income
housing, yeah.
We at Big Rapids Housing Commission rent to people with all of this entire range of incomes and higher even. And I just did the math, like the lowest paid worker on Michelle's chart, $26,000. Their 30% of their gross adjusted income would be $650 for rent. So I mean, that's not nothing. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
So could you also say income dependent?
affordable.
But affordable is different to every person, and so,
It's almost not any better than low income, I'll be honest, but it sounds better than low income.
but it is, I mean, it's housing based on their income level.
Everybody's housing is based on their income level, though, you could say, Karen.
Subsidized housing.
But your housing is what you can afford too.
Oh, I get that, but we're talking about,
You're talking about the government giving some money to these
I'm
people.
talking about there are programs available to help supplement housing.
That's what I do.
And there's probably a number of people that would qualify for them that aren't taking advantage of it because of the stigma that's attached to low-income housing. It's unfortunate.
And that's what we ran into at our meeting last time with the people not understanding at all. And the developer wanted to do housing that would require some assistance. Well, that means all those people are gonna rob the Crystal Oil and they're going to do this and they're going to do that. And that's just all nonsense talk.
Well, we have very little,
I just.
Well,
I mean, I kinda
our
got cut off, I
properties.
felt bad, honestly, cause I got cut off at the meeting. But what I wanted to say is if you're gonna do housing like this, we wanna be involved. And I think that our track record speaks for itself. So, what came out of my mouth, I think, is I don't think we need any more low-income housing.
Yes, that's what.
Then I got cut
It's
off.
very confusing.
I got cut off and somebody was behind me and I was like, I'm not gonna say anything more because it was getting a little loud. And so we feel as your partner that if you wanna do a project like that, we would like to be involved in it. that you should want us to be involved in it. We're the only ones in this room who have done tax credit projects. We've done 3 of them. I'm helping Everett Housing with the 4th one right now. We're probably one of the biggest landlords for subsidized housing in Big Rapids, probably the biggest. And we also have market rate housing. We're selling houses. We have a pretty good track record.
We help the city too,
Once in a while.
with their houses.
But if you actually want to go off on a tangent and talk about the Hanchett property, then I also have some other thoughts about that. I'm not sure that's where you want to go tonight. But if it is, we can certainly go. Questions, Fred? I can almost smell the wheels
Well, I'm
turning
thinking,
over there.
you can smell the smoke.
I can.
Do you think the city belongs in housing in any way? Maybe shouldn't be involved. That's how I started the talk. I don't enjoy the housing dilemmas that happen. It's not like the commission is anxious to become housing experts. Nobody says anything ever. I'd like to hear what my fellow commissioners think.
I'm not a commissioner, but a citizen. I don't think the city belongs in housing. I think they should be aware of what's going on as far as housing goes, but I don't think they need to be owning properties or selling properties that, something like the Hanchett property we have and we'd like to sell just so we can get the money back from it. But I don't think the city belongs in housing. I think we have to leave it to, the builders, the architects, the housing commissions. I think we need the college, need to leave that. I think if there's money that we can get to improve houses, I think that's an important thing to do. But I don't think that the city needs to be in the housing. I think, like I said, they need to be aware of what our housing needs are. And if there's any kind of suggestions or ideas, that would be good. But, to own property, I don't know that that's what cities and government does.
Yeah, but I don't think we're talking about owning property. I think what we're talking about is there's already this relationship, the housing committee and the city have an agreement, right? So for the city to be, we're already involved in housing to an extent. So I don't think we should be owning housing, but if we look at the past programs, the one that you were talking about, the one. So who bought those houses?
So
Was it the housing commission or the city?
So the way the program was set up through the state is that, and Mark, you might remember some more of this than I do, but the houses had to be vacant in order for us to renovate them. I mean, when you're going from 3 apartments to 1 apartment. So now, the city would buy them, the leases would run out, and the people would move, is that right, Mark? And the city would deed the houses over to the housing commission, who would then renovate them, sell them, and pay the housing commission, or pay the city back. So the city held the property pretty much in name only. So
But if there's funds like that available, again, that's the same relationship. That's the city and the
But there's
housing.
not.
Totally get it.
Yeah.
But again, that's the city and the housing commission working together and the city being a property owner. So
Maureen, come on. You've been here forever. I gotta hear what she's
I
saying.
think it's a little bit
but
different.
if
doesn't
you,
talk.
I think it's a little bit different than if you compare it to the property on Bellevue or whatever. You know what I mean?
You got a lot of different things going on in there.
Ah,
But you remember the building that was the lady that had the building on the corner that Eldest renovated, and she wanted to give it to the city,
Yes.
and we said no.
Claire's house?
It's the old,
There was a restaurant there at one time, a shoe factory restaurant, whatever. She desperately just wanted to give it to the city. And it's like, the city came back to her and said, we're not in the business of real estate, which we aren't for something like that. And as it turned out, he bought it and with a partner and renovated it and all was well. But I remember that particular one, it's like, we're not in business of real estate.
I remember that was the motto for years.
Yeah, I mean, the other program, the Buy Back the Neighborhood, that was a program that Sahaki and Sobers, I think, jumped up together and.
Or maybe even older.
I think it was older. Yeah, it could have been. Well,
might
I don't
have
think
been the others.
Stillwell was involved with it though.
No.
No, it was.
I think it was Sobers. He was always coming up with crazy ideas.
Except for the Handship property, does the city own other vacant land that?
That's just vacant, you mean?
Other than
Do we,
parkland?
Mark?
No.
Surveyors Park, one up on Northland, that's kind of just sits there.
What's that?
There's, Supervisors Park.
Supervisors.
We called it surveyors.
Oh,
It's-
where
it's
the,
actually
where the
turn
snow
around.
plows turn around.
Yeah.
No, that's,
No, we don't wanna develop that, that's what we own.
The city doesn't need to be involved in housing, but the city already owns at least the Handship property and other real estate. You've decided, or you've already moved and determined that it's not for a public purpose or not good for public purpose, so you need to get rid of it, so then you're gonna have to sell it to somebody, and if somebody comes with an offer, I suppose you have to entertain that offer in some way, shape, or
That's
form.
the only reason we talked to those people that just came this spring. Mark, what do you think? City should be involved in housing at all, or just no housing that involves governmental help, or do you have any thoughts on it?
well, I'd be the last one who wants to do anything of it, because every time you talk about it, it turns into sort of chaos. And, but it's probably the number one complaint we get.
We get a lot of them.
And, I mean, the city chose to be involved in housing, 70, 60 years ago when they
That's
started
what
the
I'm
housing
saying, we're
commission.
already involved in it.
Right, so I think it's a little late to probably say you're gonna not be involved. I mean, what level of involvement?
Right.
That's, I guess, that's probably more of the discussion.
I
How
have,
aggressive do you be?
I have a question to consider. Is the federal government and the state government going to offer funding that would need the assistance of the city of Big Rapids to get that funding for the Housing Commission in the future? And if we decide to not be in the housing business in any way, shape, or form, would that somehow prohibit the Housing Commission or limit the Housing Commission from getting funding?
That's a good question, but the Housing Commission has a nonprofit entity and a for-profit entity that we use to apply for these grants. But you're right, Mark, the city would be involved in housing to some aspect when it would come to like pilots or TIF, you know what I mean? That's where we would,
And-
rely
But
on our
housing is
partners.
different than the statement I made that we're, in my mind, that we're not in the business of real estate. To me, that's just something totally different.
Absolutely.
Right.
The housing, yes, we have a Big
Buy that
Rapids
one.
housing, yes.
Yes.
Separate
You
those.
really don't want
You know,
Handship.
there really, the
No,
city.
we don't.
I'd
Don't
like to
want-
make another statement too.
Go ahead.
The
Okay,
city should
hard
not
to get a
have
word
Raise
in
your
edge.
hands.
edgewise.
That's what my daughter does when my son and I are talking.
So, being elected to a city commission, it's our job to represent the best interests of all of the citizens in the community with which we serve. The majority of our population are renters, not homeowners. And just to say we're not going to be involved in this process, or even to pose the question that we stop being or limit our involvement in this process, is to say that if you are not capable of buying a house, your voice doesn't deserve to be heard, in my opinion. And I don't think that's something we should be entertaining tonight when we're trying to review data that has been meticulously combed over to try and make it a little bit easier to comprehend.
I didn't follow anything you said, so you have to explain it to
I
me.
disagree with you on that. I don't think because you are involved in housing that you're eliminating people. You have all these people that rent. You don't necessarily have to be involved in that housing, or the city's not involved in that housing, but we don't ignore them either.
Right.
And I don't know what the percentage of the people are that own their houses or that rent here. I mean, we're gonna have a high percentage because they're the students, but a lot of students still live on campus. So that's where the numbers need to be crunched if we really wanna talk about something like that. We need to look at the numbers. These are so out of date. I mean, I understand there's a lot of information here, and I appreciate all the work that you've done going over this, but it really does not give us a good idea of what's going on in the city. It doesn't tell us where we are or what we should be doing. If we have more renters than we have homeowners, we need to look at that. If we have more homeowners than we have renters, how much more renting do we need? And we don't own those rentals. So I don't think you're throwing that all out the window. I think you're just we're talking about something that we really don't know about.
Well, I can appreciate though that you want to make sure you're representing everybody in the city. But when it comes to opportunities and grants, I mean, that's what we excel at.
So, going back to the Hanship property. We had property that we bought, right, wrong, or indifferent.
Right.
City bought it, cleaned it up, put it for sale. It's been for sale for years. First time we hear that the housing commission actually wants that property or wants to do something is in a meeting. That you guys have an interest in it, or you don't have an interest in it, or we don't need more housing, or we do need more housing. So I struggle with having a meeting like this and getting letters saying we don't need housing, but we want to be involved in your housing, but the city shouldn't be involved. So,
It's
you
very
know,
difficult.
you can't walk all the lines.
We've been left out of the entire Hanchett discussion except for one meeting. It's very hard for us to be on the same page and supportive when we don't get our questions answered about the small amount of paperwork that we received. So I was
And I
invited to
think
one meeting, and then I was given paperwork an hour before a second meeting, which was just Mark and Michelle, and didn't even have a chance to review it, and then asked my questions and didn't get them answered, and then came to the meeting. I'm very concerned about the Hanchett property not being a good place to build housing, because I do believe there will be a lot of environmental obstacles. And as a person who's worked at the Housing Commission for over 30 years, I can say that if you can't have a garden there, you probably shouldn't have housing there, because I have elderly and family at all of our properties that have gardens. And whether they're a renter or a homeowner, and that statement just doesn't make sense to me. So that's my issue with it. If you guys are insisting that you really want housing there and you really want a project like Janasco was proposing on a smaller scale maybe, we would look at it. We would think that you would approach us if that's what you wanted, but you never have.
If you wanted
I brought it up
low-income
to
housing
Mark a
there.
few months ago and said, you guys have never asked us to take this on. Whether that's something that Sahaki and Gifford talked about before or not talked about, I don't know. But, you know, when you bring a housing developer from outside the area in before you even approach us about it.
I have a question.
We didn't bring him in, by the way.
Yeah, it's
That's
a real
true.
estate,
That's
it's up
true.
for
That
sale.
was my question.
We were just a
We
developer.
have no control over.
My involvement or my understanding is that the city received an offer from that company.
Developer, yeah.
So how can the housing commissioner, how would you propose that the city work with the housing commission in the extent tomorrow somebody else that wants low-income housing submits an offer to the
I
city?
kind of thought that's what this meeting was
Right.
about.
Yes.
Right, so I mean, that's, I guess the question I have is how do you work?
But it's gonna cost, it would probably cost a lot of money. I mean, think about it this way. The Nisbet building is next to Patterson's Flowers, who, talking about Kroger earlier, who knew, I didn't, that Patterson's Flowers was a dry cleaner 50 years ago. So that immediately put us into a phase 2 environmental, which costs about 25 grand, and all this vapor encroachment system. I mean, we're up to like $450,000 just because we were next to a dry cleaning company that had chemicals under the ground, under the building, seep over under the Nisbet building. Now just think about, it was a trace amount over the accepted level. Now think about the Hanchett property. It's across the street from a factory. It was a factory.
Yeah, but there's brownfield development grants all the time, just because the housing commission doesn't see it as a place to build the type of housing you build, doesn't mean a developer can't come in and buy that and put housing
But I
there.
don't think it would ever actually really happen. I mean, it's gonna cost a lot of money to clean that property up if it still has contaminants on it or next to it.
That's
And
very
Mr. might
different.
even say that it's not a good, Mr., it's not, if you read some of the stuff that I sent over, which I'm sure you did, I'm not trying to imply that you didn't, that it is not a good site. It's not a good building site for apartments.
But you're saying that as the housing commission.
I'm saying that as someone who's done 3 tax credit.
Right.
applications.
But someone else could come in as
They
a
could.
developer and build housing there, and what you're saying is the housing commission doesn't support housing at that site. That's what you're saying.
Unless you're gonna do the cleanup with it.
Right.
But a developer can come in and clean
Are we
it
gonna make
up.
sure the developer does the cleanup?
That's their job.
Well, that would
that's our
be their
job.
job, but would they do
They
it?
would have to, or they wouldn't.
But you're just saying, no, we don't want it, so it's not good.
That's not what I,
That's
that's
what
not
you
what I
said.
said. That's not what I said.
She said there's a lot of money that would have to be invested
Right.
in the cleanup.
And if you really want, if that's what you really want there, we would definitely look into it. But I would have a lot of concerns about it. It's kind of a catch-22. I'm not trying to be difficult, Karen, but like, we have good housing with good people, and I care about the community. So I wanna see some oversight on our part if you bring in new housing. That's just who I am. That's what we do, is have good housing. So my concern is if you're bringing somebody else, yeah, they would have to clean it up. And what would happen was, they would find out how much it costs to clean it up, and they very well could pull out of the deal.
That could happen.
And that could happen.
But
If there
to
was a
say
way we
you
could see
wanna
it,
be
make it
part of
happen.
it, but only for this specific part of it, it's a property that's for sale. And to get a letter and to have the head of the housing commission say in a meeting, we don't think it's a good fit for housing. Do you know what that does to
We
the
don't think
community?
it's a good-
You're polarizing people, because your opinion is that it's too hard to develop for the type of housing that you would put there as
That's
the
my
housing
professional
commission.
opinion, yes. Yes, and
So
maybe if
what-
I would have been involved and could have asked a few more questions before we got to that point, maybe I would have gotten my questions answered.
And how are we supposed to read your mind?
I let Mark know I was interested, we were potentially interested in the property a few months ago. But you would think if you thought you wanted housing there, you would ask us too. So I guess it's 6 of one, half dozen of another.
Certainly isn't my choice. There are other things I'd like to see there.
I think
But
there
there's
are
other
things
types
there.
of housing.
Yeah, and has anyone approached the city about buying it and putting condos in there, or?
This was the first developer that we heard from, I think.
Exactly.
They come
That
and
was,
go.
that came with an offer.
Right,
That came
that's
with an
correct.
offer. I'm sure that there's plenty of other people that have reached out over the years and asked about housing.
I guess that's the issue is, are you requesting, I guess, if the city were to receive an offer tomorrow from some developer to put any kind of housing on the Hampshire property, that you be involved in that discussion before the city?
I would think you would want us to be involved. I was surprised that you didn't have us involved,
I mean,
because we've done it.
yeah, we've done houses that are not low income, and we've done houses that are low income.
So if somebody wants to come in and build lofts and build $1 million lofts there, you wanna be
If they
involved
wanna
in
do
that conversation.
And if
Any
they wanna
housing
do
there.
affordable housing or a low-income housing tax credit, wouldn't you think you would want us to be involved as your partner and as a developer with experience?
I don't think
in
anybody
multiple
was
types of housing?
was keeping you from that conversation.
Well, that's not really what it felt like, but.
You made your opinion known.
Well, thank you for listening. Appreciate that.
Want a hotel with retail on the bottom and a restaurant on the top. You got
It was
somebody.
supposed to be mixed use with
That's what I-
residential units and
What?
restaurants.
I mean, we've had a lot of people interested in it.
Nobody's interested in that at all.
I think that's a
They're
great
not flooding
idea.
us with
I think that's a
interest.
great
That's
idea
the whole
too,
thing.
honestly, but you gotta
They're
find
not flooding
somebody
us, somebody
to-
has to have,
I think it should be.
Goshen is interested if they come and establish their factory. They would look at that property
Fred's Field of Flowers.
for a hotel.
And that would be the
With a
name of the
restaurant on
hotel.
top.
That would be the name of the hotel.
But
Fred's Field
we
of
don't see
Flowers.
it happening just yet, the offer's not on the table. Interesting conversation.
And might I just offer one little tidbit about the housing study? I don't think it was intended to get the city involved in building houses. I think its intention was to guide the city in the zoning of properties for the purpose of development.
Probably more.
Agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean,
What it
from the
was.
legal aspect, I think the city's involvement with housing would be in terms of policy and land use and zoning and, you know, creating
And
housing commission.
if we ever let Michelle finish this,
That's what
I
I
think
was
she says
trying
that
to get
several
at.
times in here. Cities would be involved with zoning typical to any other development.
Yeah, I think that's my final statement that I wrote. So, yeah, that's where we come into play.
To me, the more apropos is not the Hanchett property, more the Bjornson property. That's completely developable if we had infrastructure. Now, there's where it should be actively pursued, not on that toxic waste site over there. People say it is, and some people say it isn't. You know, that's where I think if we're gonna spend money, that's where the money should be spent. But it's gonna be $4 million for the infrastructure, at least.
Well, Braeborn's almost done, so no pressure.
You know,
Hanchett property,
$4 million's a lot.
and with the Hanchett property, because the city has declared it not to be fit for a public purpose, if you receive an offer, you are legally obligated to enter, you know, at least
Yes.
respond to it or consider it. So I think that was why that came about the way it did, is you received that offer, but I understand.
I would like to request, at a future dated meeting, we have a work session on what this commission would consider, acceptable use of that property, what offers we would like to entertain, and if we had those offers, what criteria would make us want to not accept the offer or would encourage us to accept it. So when we have more offers on that property, we can come to a more, concise decision.
Michelle, that
was
could be
the
done,
next step.
that could be done with a lot of work session. You can ask the commissioner to send in their information, put it all together, send it back out and see what people are thinking. Do the legwork before, cause sitting here, it's not gonna go very far.
That almost seems like, I mean, that seems like something that goes into your zoning ordinance, right? How do you zone the what type of development you want on the property is how you zone it and how it's classified in the master plan's future.
I actually thought it had been rezoned,
It's R3, I think,
yeah.
and it was commercial.
Right.
Was
It
industrial.
was an industrial, so it's R3 right now, so we're saying it's zoned for resident.
Yes,
So if the city, and that would be the planning commission decision initially, and they would send it to you probably, but it would be, if they don't think it's fit for housing, then they should entertain a rezoning, motion and go through that process. Whether they zone it commercial or industrial, whatever.
but I don't think Amanda's, request is bad at all. I think
No,
we
it's
can
the
all be
next
sending in our
level.
information,
We need
let her collate it.
We need to get an idea of what we collectively
Sure.
would like to see there, and then perhaps the, planning commission would have some real data to kind of review and make a decision to get back to us with.
Mark, how come we hear all these different things about the property and its environmental risk? My son-in-law came up and looked, and after he read the report, said, there's gonna be a lot of work has to be done here, and the profit margin is going away. That's why he withdrew. Is it because there's an area on that property that's still contaminated that you can't dig a basement or whatever? What's the deal there?
Yeah, I think there will be forever issues with the property, just like there are all along the river.
Okay.
Just like there are at every brownfield site that's developed in every town in Michigan, right? There's remediation factors that go along with them. They ran into one at the Nisbet building. I'm sure would run into some restrictions there. Does that mean it would stop a project? We don't know. There's not a person here who knows. Depends on what the project is. I mean, your son-in-law was looking at it sort of a for-profit operation, you know, cash flowing. I mean, that's different than what Janasco was doing or what the Housing Commission might do. I mean, to a certain degree, maybe you ought to let the private sector and the market work it out. I don't know why we're necessarily.
Flooding to buy the
No,
property,
but
right?
we had an offer.
We had an offer. That's why,
Yeah, I don't know
You
about
don't think
flooding.
Janasco was interested in that because they didn't wanna make money?
Of course they
That's
said.
not at all what I'm
Well,
saying. That's not even
But they need-
remotely
As
close to what I'm
as
saying.
someone who's done a project similar to Janasco, we just, make sure everybody knows how this works, is that, you know, they, I don't know, Brad, what were they calling it? Was it an option or, was it letter of intent?
Letter of intent.
Yeah, so in order to apply for tax credits, you have to have site control. So you have to have, I think, a little bit more than a letter of intent. You have to have an option to purchase, which is saying that the city will sell them the property if they get the award, okay? The reason that is because Janasco would have to do the phase 1 environmental and a market study and a capital needs assessment. And in order to submit that application to the state, they've got anywhere between $25,000 and $60,000 wrapped up into just applying, okay? So the phase 1 comes back, if the phase 1 comes back bad, then they could pull out. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or if the phase 1 comes back bad and they still want to continue to take that risk and they apply, the application is like this big because it's surveys and, I mean, I could give you a list. Testing and architect and plans and trade payment breakdowns and management agreements, and you send that into the state, and if you get an award, if your project is funded, they say, okay, we're gonna give you all this money, but first you have to do 6 more pages of environmental stuff, and you have to do this, and you have to do that, and then that's when they really look at it and be like, when do I cut my losses?
They must know that when they wanted the letter of intent, right? They knew that was all gonna happen, stacks and that must be what they have 40 developments, so they probably know
Yeah, right.
what
They
the
had,
hell they're doing.
did you know they had 14 just in this round 18 of gap financing? And, yeah, so, yeah, they had a lot. I think they were hedging their bets.
Whatever. It was a good conversation. I think we aired some things. I don't know that the commission has made any unified statement on housing at this meeting. So we're just gonna move on right now. If somebody wants to make a motion that says we're not gonna be involved with any housing that deals with.
No, because we're already involved in housing because housing commission.
I do think that the city commission should approve all housing commission board members.
Be the same as any other commission.
No, they don't.
But the
No.
city manager.
Right, it should be the board that does it so that we feel we have some connection. We don't have any connection to the housing commission right now.
But that's kind of not our fault or your.
No,
So I think
we didn't have
which is
anything to
why-
do with it.
Which is why we suggested in our letter that we have another joint meeting. And I think we definitely need to do that when it comes to phase 2. And I just think, I'm sorry if the letter offended anybody, but I think that our lines of
It was pretty
communication
aggressive.
need to be more open.
Then I think the city policy should be that we approve the board members for the housing commission.
That would be an ordinance change.
So,
Or it could be by resolution, because the statute provides chief administrative office unless the city commission determines otherwise, so you can do it by resolution.
If the city truly has some connection to the housing commission, we never see real financial statements ever. We see your year-end thing, but that's not a financial statement. That's a little different then. You see what I'm saying? So I don't know what the role of the city commission should be in its relationship to the housing commission. I don't get it. I read the stuff and it's
Right.
pretty vague.
The city commission created the housing commission. But our funding, our primary purpose of public housing operated through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And all of our rules and our funding for our main Big Rapids Housing Commission, Parkview and Evergreen Village, all comes from HUD. All of our rules are through HUD. It's because we have been dynamic in doing these extra projects that we created the nonprofit and the for-profit in order to do extra projects, which not every housing commission does. But we've been pretty successful in it. And we owe a lot of that to the city, a ton of it to the city. So the letter was not meant to, I think it was just meant to give our position. Because we probably feel, our board feels just as left out as it sounds like you guys do. So there's gotta be something that we
There should
can
have
do
been
to
something
communicate better.
that a city commission member should sit on the housing commission board, but we can't. We can only be on one.
And you're welcome, everyone's welcome to come to our meetings,
Or you could, every so often have,
a joint meeting,
a joint meeting, or you could have Linda come and report to you.
which I have before, Mark has, updates on Mechanic Street. and-
Joint meetings aren't what y'all think they are.
Right, but I,
Sometimes work real good.
In Everett right now, there's a housing report on the agenda, the city's agenda. Mark goes to the city meetings once a month. I don't know, sometimes twice a month.
I think
And he
twice
gives
a
a
month.
report, but I mean, I don't know if he does, I don't know if he gives a
Oh,
housing
you don't know if he
report.
goes, yeah.
But you know what I mean, I could certainly do that. When I get the agenda and there's nothing relating to housing on it, I don't come, just like you guys don't come to our meetings.
But, and I know that that's a lot, but, maybe quarterly or something she could come, or if you wanted her every month, we're gonna make you go every month.
You can.
So the city commissioners are all meditating on this, right? Because we'll need to talk about it again. Let Mark know what you're thinking. We can't have more than three of us, three in a room and think together. That's a real disadvantage.
That's why.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Real
why we're
disadvantage.
talking about
Sessions.
that.
It's a real
That's why we only
disadvantage.
have two
That's
here
why we do work
tonight.
sessions.
Finished. Plain.
Karen, do you feel
you
like
are.
the question you asked at the beginning of the meeting has been thoroughly considered?
I think we talked about, no, it hasn't, because I think what I was getting to was what to do with the Hanchett property, so that we could give direction to city staff. But talking to city staff and preparing for this, we kind of knew we weren't gonna get to Hanchett today. We were gonna learn about the housing study, call out the pros, call out the cons. The mayor asked that we add in the discussion with the housing commission. So I think we've done all the things that I had hoped that we would do. And I would ask if others don't feel that way, come and talk to me and we'll,
But
figure
is there,
something
are
out.
people against talking to Michelle or Mark about what our reason for the Hanchett property would be? And we could put something together. Maybe we all have the same idea. Boutique hotel, the rest of it on top. Right, Mark? They're just flocking to do that.
That's
I don't
right.
think it's.
We had a hotel guy come.
Yeah, we
When he heard Hanchett hadn't broken ground, we haven't heard from him since.
Oh, you mean Goshen?
Or Goshen. Or Goshen. They pulled out, we haven't heard from that group.
Well, maybe the.
Well, I
were
think
ready.
Maybe
if
they'll come
Goshen
back.
does,
That'll sell.
yeah, that'll
Great.
sell.
Hotel.
They'll take care of it.
What you think, Mark? What do you think?
Oh,
I have to say.
We had him here. I'm trying to. We have to rezone it.
Kathy's quote needs to say the mayor said it, not Mark.
I'm voting the mayor.
Are we adjourned?
I have nothing more, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you to Michelle and to Mark.
Thanks for coming, Linda.
And for
Thank you
Linda.
for inviting her.
Ms. Williams, thank you for coming.
Are you